Masks of the Masquerade by xxImpressions. Chapter 2. 5 years later. Having spent the majority of your life under lock and key, this newly founded sensation of freedom felt more like a distant acquaintance rather than a familiar friend. Though you had longed to get the smallest lick of liberty, you had not wanted it to come at such a high price. While it was true that you and your father would have disagreements over your forced seclusion, it did not mean he was nevertheless a loving parent. He would go above and beyond to find the latest invention or newest diversion to keep you entertained in various ways. Of course, knowing how you operated, it always worked. Your mind was made for crafting and solving puzzles, so any random trinket could easily keep you occupied for hours on end depending on the complexities of the item. It was what you both bonded over most as you grew up with a father like yours. So it was a devastating blow to have to realize another novelty would never come as you watched your father lay on his deathbed only months before. Thinking back to that day, you remembered how curious it was that even though emotionally, you were numb as the agonizing reality set in, your body subconsciously knew it was a time for tears. They silently washed down your face as you physically mourned the man you both loved and resented. As he lay dying, you would never forget the words he whispered that shifted your perspective of him from being your jailer.
My sweet child. All these years, I have kept you hidden away from the world. And I know you have hated me for it.
To that of being your protector.
And now, I believe it is time I told you why.
You recalled as he began to tell his story with regret and love clear as day on his face. After bestowing upon you a secret so monumental, it had the power to make your world spin off its axis, you remember watching as your father peacefully fell asleep, only to never wake again. In the days that followed, the routine you had set and were used to living by since you were a child was overruled by the chaos that came with having a death in the family. You and your mother had welcomed all sorts of acquaintances who had wanted to show their sympathies and wish you their condolences. It was the most interacting with others you had ever done aside from that special night all those years ago. That being said, all of this socializing threw you for such a loop that most days, you found yourself drained and exhausted as evening arrived. This was the first sign that your father's death had meant a plethora of changes for your life. Because now, you were no longer prevented from talking to people, and it presented the oddest feeling to not have to ask for permission in order to greet the strangers that entered your home. Because now, your paternal figure was no longer there to grant it. And as you stated earlier, freedom happens to be a peculiar experience when you are in no way familiar with it. So those first few days were an adjustment to say the least. But soon, those days turned into weeks. And those weeks turned into months. And after everything had been legally finalized, you and your family gathered to hear the reading of the will to your father's title and estate. After you, your mother, your uncle by marriage, and his only son, your cousin, had come together within the lawyer's office, the ensuing outcome of the meeting had led to an explosive exit from your relatives that no one saw coming. Either way, the consequences of your father's final wishes had resulted in you and your mother ultimately agreeing it was in your best interest for you both to make your way to London in order for you to finally make your debut to society. The idea thrilled and terrified you all at once. You supposed this essential conflict was one last parting gift to make up for the way you had been raised, and you were still debating on how grateful you should feel about that. Regardless of your nerves, you bravely kept your head held high as you followed your mother into a carriage and began making your way to town for the first time. As the horses pulled to a stop outside your new London home, you were glad to say the weather of the city was agreeable as it matched your mood. The more of the world you saw during your journey here, the more your fear turned into excitement. The brightly shining sun that greeted you as you stepped out of your carriage mirrored your new enthusiasm so well, you decided to take a moment to turn your face upwards and just bask for a moment at the partly clouded, blue skies. You could swear that your eyes had only been closed for a few seconds at most, but that was apparently enough time for you to collide with someone who had not noticed you standing on the sidewalk. Feeling strong and steadying hands be placed on your back as you briefly stumbled to the side, you opened your eyes to a most handsome sight indeed.
I beg your pardon, my lady. I hope I did not hurt you.
It took a moment of staring for you to comprehend that he was asking you a question. But once you realized, you rushed to say,
"Oh, no, I am not hurt."
With a touch of bashfulness, you continued.
"I hope you are also unharmed."
You unthinkingly reached both hands out to touch his shoulders in order to check him this way, and that before being informed by the man himself.
I reassure you, madam,
he said with a slight chuckle at your genuine concern,
that I am quite well.
Locking eyes and seeing the mirth still dancing in his, was when you were able to finally acknowledge that you may be a bit too close to a person you had literally just run into. After dropping your hands, taking a small step back, and clearing your throat, you said with a sheepish smile,
"My apologies, I just wanted to make sure you were well."
Touched by the sincerity in your voice, the strange man across from you gave an appreciative smile in return as he responded,
I do not believe you have to apologize for that.
Grateful for his reassurance, you both held the other's gaze and would have gone on taking in the other's face had it not been for your new housekeeper approaching.
"Ah, good afternoon, Lord Bridgerton. I see you have met her ladyship here. Surely you two will become well acquainted as she has just moved into the property next door to yours on this very street with her mother, the Dowager Countess."
The older woman had a professional and polite tone as she unofficially introduced the two of you. The person you now knew to be Lord Bridgerton was just as jovial as he replied,
Certainly. I hope our families become well acquainted indeed.
The man who had run into you less than 2 minutes ago then took your gloved hand and pressed a kiss to the back of your knuckles while saying,
Until we meet again, my lady.
After giving a respectful bow, he turned to finish his journey by taking the few steps needed to get inside the Bridgerton family home. And while you had to force yourself not to watch his departure, you could not help but to wonder if all the men of London were just as charming as he was. End of chapter 2.